Hello and welcome to our Bible study of 1 Kings, and we are in chapter 3 today. Okay. And Solomon made affinity with Pharaoh, king of Egypt, and took Pharaoh's daughter and brought her into the city of David until he made an end of building his own house and the house of the Lord and the wall of Jerusalem round about. So Solomon probably felt a lot of pressure governing God's people, and early on in his reign he made a deal with the king of Egypt that he would marry his daughter. Made a deal to marry the Pharaoh's daughter. He's not afraid to use marriage as a political strategy, with alliances. Only the people sacrificed in high places because there was no house to build unto the name of the Lord until those days. And Solomon loved the Lord, walking in the statutes of David his father, only he sacrificed and burnt incense in high places. And the king went to Gibeon to sacrifice there, for that was the great high place. 1,000 burnt offerings did Solomon offer upon that altar. So unfortunately, at this time, Israel was sacrificing on the high places, which is basically engaging in pagan practices that they learned from the Canaanites. And it was in violation of the Mosaic law. But despite these pagan practices, Solomon loved the Lord and he walked in statutes with his father David. So they were practicing paganism. And it's interesting, it's what they learned from others, what they learned from the Canaanites. And that can happen when you're surrounded by people of different practices. Like look at New Age, for example, how that's just seeping in to everywhere. It seems innocent enough, but soon people, everyone's meditating and doing yoga thinking that it's fine, it's normal, everyone does it. But it's not of the Lord. And the king went to Gibeon to sacrifice there, for that was the great high place. 1,000 burnt offerings did Solomon offer upon that altar. In Gibeon the Lord appeared to Solomon in a dream by night, and God said, Ask what I shall give thee. And Solomon said, Thou hast showed unto thy servant David my father great mercy, according as he walked before thee in truth, and in righteousness, and in uprightness of heart with thee, and thou hast kept for him this great kindness, that thou hast given him a son to sit on his throne, as it is this day. And now, O Lord my God, thou hast made thy servant king instead of David my father, and I am but a little child. I know not how to get out or come in. I feel like that sometimes. Just a baby. And thy servant is in the midst of thy people, which thou hast chosen, a great people that cannot be numbered or counted for multitude. Therefore give thy servant an understanding heart to judge thy people, that I may discern between good and bad. For who is able to judge this, thy so great a people? So he went to Gibeon. Now Gibeon is the most famous high place, great high place. So Gibeon, most famous high place. And he went there and asked the Lord for wisdom. And now we know Solomon has a whole book on his wisdom. So that was an important move. And God started off saying, all right, what shall I give you? Apparently, according to my notes, he was about 20 when he became king. Solomon was about 20. That's a big responsibility for someone so young. But he was already very wise. He recognized, I'm a child, I have got no experience in leadership. No experience in leadership. But he was now in charge of a whole nation, and he knew what he needed was a good heart to judge and lead them. which is a great thing to ask for. He asked God, you know, what shall I give thee? And he said, such a beautiful thing. He said, Solomon asked God for a receptive heart to lead and judge. And the first step to becoming a kingdom man or woman is to realize our desperate need for God. We need to realize our desperate need for God. Actually, I'm going to have a drink. And the speech pleased the Lord that Solomon had asked this thing. Aww. Oh, I love the thought of God being really happy with us when we talk to him and ask for the right things. And God said unto him, because thou hast asked this thing, and thou hast not asked for thyself long life, yes, neither hast asked riches for thyself, yes, nor hast asked the life of thine enemies, but hast asked for thyself understanding to discern judgment. So you haven't asked for money or a long life or selfish things of this world. You've asked for very wise things. Behold, I have done according to thy words. Lo, I have given thee a wise and understanding heart. A wise and understanding heart, yes. So that there was none like thee before thee, neither after thee shall there arise like unto thee. Oh, he's going to be unique. And I have also given thee that which thou hast not asked, both riches and honour, so that there shall not be any among the kings like unto thee by all thy days. I love that. So because he didn't ask for it, he's going to bless him anyway with wealth and honour. And if thou wilt walk in my ways to keep my statutes and my commandments, as thy father David did walk, then I will lengthen thy days. Isn't that beautiful? So he said, because you didn't ask for a long life and for money and for a good life here, I'm going to give it to you anyway. But because you asked for what was right, you're going to be blessed doubly. So, such a contrast to how, you know, people responding with sin, and he's like, well, I'm having to have this consequence and this consequence. Whereas if we go and ask him with a pure heart and ask him for what is good and right, he's got so many blessings in store for us. So many blessings, but we're so busy, bogged down with being selfish, that we don't stop and think and ask for what is right, and he'll bless us anyway. And Solomon awoke, and behold, it was a dream, and he came to Jerusalem and stood before the ark of the covenant of the Lord, and offered up burnt offerings and offered peace offerings, and made a feast to all his servants. So it's saying here, Solomon will need to walk in the Lord's ways in order to get these blessings. That's a great point, actually. So God's promises are certain, but we have to be obedient to get them. And so the first thing Solomon did was worship, praise, and a feast. So let me write it a note. We need to be obedient to receive these blessings. Then came there 2 women that were harlots unto the king, and stood before him. And the one woman said, O my lord, I and this woman dwell in one house, and I was delivered of a child with her in the house. And it came to pass the 3rd day, that after I was delivered, this woman was delivered also, and we were together. There was no stranger with us in the house, save we 2 in the house. And this woman's child died in the night, because she overlaid it. And she arose at midnight, and took my son from beside me, while thine handmaid slept, and laid it in her bosom, and laid her dead child in my bosom. Oh, goodness. And when I rose in the morning to give my child suck, behold, it was dead. When I had considered it in the morning, behold, it was not my son which I did bear. And the other woman said, Nay, but the living is my son, and the dead is thy son. And this said, No, but the dead is thy son, and the living is my son. Thus they spake before the king. Oh, goodness. So he was greeted with a dilemma of two women, one woman's baby had died and another swapped it. So we've got this whole dilemma that Solomon has now got to face. And so hopefully we're going to see this wisdom come to pass now. Then said the king, This one saith, This is my son that liveth, and thy son is the dead. And the other saith, Nay, but thy son is the dead, and my son is the living. And the king said, Bring me a sword. And they brought a sword before the king. And the king said, Divide the living child in two, and give half to the one and half to the other. Then spake the woman whose the living child was unto the king, for her bowels yearned upon her son. And she said, O my lord, give her the living child, and in no wise slay it. But the other said, Let it be neither mine nor thine, but divide it. I remember hearing this story when I was a kid. I think we were told it was a teddy bear though, rather than a baby, if I remember correctly. But yeah, this is, I had a little bit of a flashback there. Because I remember being like, what, they're going to rip the bear in half? So this is very interesting response from Solomon. So obviously they didn't have DNA tests back then, and the average judge would, what would you do? You'd be like, well, it's just one word against another. But God gave Solomon so much wisdom that he knew what to do. And he said, okay, we're just going to cut the baby in half and give one half to the one and one half to the other. And if you look at that just at face value, you think, well, that's crazy. But you have to understand Solomon's wisdom here. He knew exactly what was going to happen. And the real mother is going to be begging for the baby's life and would even be willing to give him up so that the baby would survive. And the other woman didn't care. And she was like, okay, go for it. The wisdom is there. It's so clear to see what he was doing. And so Solomon didn't just have wisdom of knowledge and understanding, but his wisdom is spiritual, and he can see the world from a spiritual perspective. So Solomon had spiritual wisdom. And saw beyond. His solution helped expose the real mother. Very clever. Then the king answered and said, Give her the living child, and in no wise slay it. She is the mother thereof. And all Israel heard of the judgment which the king had judged, and they feared the king, for they saw that the wisdom of God was in him to do judgment. Oh yes, the wisdom of God was in him. So his solution worked, and he found out who the mother was and gave the baby back to her, and justice was served. And it was such a clever way of doing that gossip got around about how incredible Solomon was, and they were all in awe of him because of his ability to carry out such justice with wisdom. So his reputation as the wisest man who'd ever lived spread really quickly, and it brought glory to God. So Solomon's wisdom of being the wisest man ever brought glory to God. I love that. We should always try and bring glory to God in what we do as well. So what is it that you do on a daily basis? And how can you bring glory to God? It could be through anything. We should always try and glorify him and be the best we can be. So I hate it when I get my short-tempered or something, or snappy or whatever, and And it's important to stop and think and go, ew, does this glorify God? Is God happy with this? Like, no. So we have to kind of always reassess and try and be the best we can be, and ask God for what it is that we want. Like, if we want more patience, we need to go to him and ask him for patience so that we can glorify him. And he's going to bless us with abundantly more if we continue to be obedient and walk in his ways. So I'm going to reflect on that, and I'm going to think, what am I going to ask God for today? What is it that I want? What qualities do I want that are going to help glorify him? Let me know what yours would be. What are you going to ask for? You can ask for wisdom, you can ask for patience. What qualities do you think are most important for you in your life? I'll have a little reflect on it as well. But that was a really, really beautiful chapter. I liked that. That was really good. And a great story, and we're starting to see Solomon's wisdom come through now as well. I think it's going to be an exciting story. So join me tomorrow for chapter 4, and we'll see what goes down. And leave your takeaways and comments below, and I'll get back to you. Until then, I'll see you tomorrow. Bye!